"They can eat leftovers," my father said coldly, pushing the takeout menu toward my sister's kids while mine sat in silence, their stomachs growling. No one even looked at my children. It was as if they didn't exist. And that night, something inside me broke forever. And if this moment already shocked you, just imagine what's coming next. Make sure to hit subscribe, tap the like button, and share this story, because you won't believe the twist waiting for this family. I sat there at the dining table, my son tugging at my sleeve, whispering, "Mom, are we not getting food too?" My throat tightened, but I forced a smile, telling him quietly, "We'll eat later." "Sweetheart," across from me, my sister's kids shouted out orders of pizza, burgers, and fries like little royalty while my family cheered them on. Not one person asked my children what they wanted. Not one person cared. "Lauren, you should teach your kids not to be so greedy," my mother suddenly said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You don't contribute much here, so don't expect handouts." Laughter rippled across the table, stabbing me deeper than any knife could. My children lowered their eyes, ashamed for being hungry. But what no one knew was that for months I had been working day and night in silence. While they mocked me for being the broke single mom, I was building something behind their backs. And soon, this cruel dinner table would be the place where I flipped everything upside down. I clenched my fists under the table, forcing myself not to snap back. Every cruel word carved into me, but I knew I had to stay silent, for now. My sister leaned back smugly, sipping her soda, and said, "Well, Lauren, maybe if you worked harder instead of wasting time, your kids wouldn't always depend on us." Everyone laughed again, and my kids' faces turned red with embarrassment. That humiliation burned into me, but behind my silence, I was holding a storm no one expected. What they didn't know was that every night, after tucking my kids into bed, I was glued to my laptop, learning, building, and grinding. I had started a small online business, nothing flashy at first, just reselling and flipping products. Slowly it grew. I reinvested everything, sacrificing sleep, comfort, even proper meals, just to push forward. Weeks turned into months, and suddenly, I wasn't just scraping by anymore. Orders were flooding in, my savings account was growing, and deals were landing in my inbox from brands that once ignored me. But here at this table, they still thought of me as the struggling mom. My father smirked, handing my sister's kids cash for dessert, and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. At least one of my daughters turned out successful. My chest tightened, but I stayed quiet. They had no clue I was now making more in a month than my sister had in a year at her office job. I looked at my children, their eyes dim from humiliation, and in that moment I made a silent promise. They would never feel this kind of shame again. Soon this family would regret underestimating me, and when the truth came out, it would not just shock them. It would destroy the fake pride they carried. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was becoming unstoppable. The day came faster than I expected. My father's birthday dinner, the kind of event where my entire extended family gathered in their finest clothes, bragging about promotions, vacations, and whose kids had the best grades. I almost didn't go, but something inside me told me this was the moment I had been waiting for. When I walked into the restaurant with my kids, I noticed the subtle smirks, the whispers. My sister, dressed in a designer dress, immediately made a show of standing up and hugging me, loud enough for the table to hear. "Lauren, you made it. I wasn't sure you could afford this place." The table erupted in laughter. My kids lowered their heads. I forced a smile and took my seat. I let them have their moment, every insult, every sideways glance. They still thought I was the same woman they mocked months ago. But under the table, my phone kept buzzing, notifications of sales, payments hitting my account, messages from partners closing new deals. I was sitting on a secret that was about to blow their fake superiority to pieces. Halfway through dinner, the waiter approached. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Ma'am, just to confirm, are you covering the entire bill tonight? It'll be charged to the card you gave us earlier." The whole table went silent. My father's eyes narrowed. My sister laughed, choking on her drink. "Covering the bill? Lauren, don't embarrass yourself. You can't even pay your rent." I looked up slowly, my kids watching me with wide eyes, and said clearly, "Yes, charge it to my card." The waiter nodded and left. Confusion spread across the table. My uncle chuckled nervously. My aunt whispered something about me joking, and then my father leaned forward and asked sharply, "Lauren, what's going on? You don't have this kind of money." That was the moment. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small envelope, and slid it across the table. Inside were documents, my company's registration, a partnership contract, and last month's revenue sheet. "Maybe you should stop assuming what I can or can't afford," I said, my voice steady but cutting. My sister snatched the papers, her face draining of color as she read the numbers. My father grabbed them next, his hands trembling. Silence fell over the table. The kind of silence that comes when reality shatters pride. I leaned back, finally letting the truth sink in. "While you were busy laughing at me, I built something real. And from now on, my kids will never have to sit here and feel less than anyone." My children looked at me with pride in their eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The power had shifted, and they knew it. This wasn't revenge. This was vindication. The silence after my words was deafening, the kind that makes every breath sound too loud. My father sat back in his chair, staring at the papers as if they were written in another language. He had spent years convinced I was the family embarrassment, a failure who would never amount to anything. Now, the proof of my success was staring him in the face, undeniable. My sister, however, wasn't ready to accept defeat. She scoffed loudly, tossing the documents back onto the table. "So what? A little business you got lucky with? Don't think this makes you better than us. Money doesn't erase the fact that you've always been a burden." Her words cut, but the sharp edge they once had was dull now. Everyone could see it. Her anger wasn't confidence, it was fear. I smiled, calm in a way I had never been around her. "This isn't about being better. It's about proving that your mockery, your constant belittling, never defined me. I built this from nothing while you were busy tearing me down. And guess what? It worked. My kids are proud of me. That's worth more than all your fake status and empty words." My children squeezed my hands under the table, their faces glowing with pride. I saw my father glance at them, then back at me, his jaw tight. For the first time, there was no judgment in his eyes, just the heavy weight of regret. Other relatives began murmuring. My aunt, who had always been quiet, finally spoke. "Lauren, we didn't realize how hard you were working. You've proven all of us wrong." My sister snapped at her, but it was no use. The energy had shifted. The relatives who once snickered at my struggles were now looking at me with respect, even admiration. Every cruel laugh, every insult they'd hurled at me, had been replaced with silence and uncomfortable shame. The waiter returned with the bill, discreetly placing it in front of me. I handed over my card without hesitation. No one spoke. No one could. My father cleared his throat, as if trying to reclaim some control. "Lauren, maybe we should talk. Just you and me." I met his gaze. Years of hurt passed between us in that moment. Every dismissal, every word where he told me I'd never be enough. I nodded once. "Maybe, but not tonight. Tonight, I'm here for my kids." With that, I stood, my children following beside me. As we walked out, I could feel every eye on my back. But for the first time, I didn't feel small or broken. I felt unstoppable. The night that was supposed to humiliate me had become the night my family finally saw me for who I was. A week later, the dust from that dinner still hadn't settled. Whispers moved through the family faster than wildfire. Everyone who had once labeled me the black sheep was now scrambling to rewrite the story. Some pretending they had always believed in me, others staying quiet out of shame. But there was one person who couldn't stay silent. My father. He showed up at my office without warning. For years, I had dreamed of him walking into my world and finally seeing what I had built. But now that he was actually here, I felt a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, and an ache for the love I had always craved. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow, as if life had weighed him down more than I realized. "Lauren," he began, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I owe you an apology." I didn't respond right away. I let him stand there, eyes darting around the room, taking in the walls lined with awards, the framed pictures of my children smiling beside me, and the staff who passed by greeting me respectfully. Every detail was proof of what I had accomplished, proof he could never ignore again. Finally, I spoke. You don't just owe me an apology, Dad. You owe one to my children, too. They've heard the way you dismissed me. They've felt the sting of your words even when they weren't directed at them. You didn't just underestimate me. You taught them to doubt their mother. His shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, I saw tears gather in his eyes. I was wrong. I thought being hard on you would toughen you up, but instead I pushed you away. And then I believed the lies your sister fed me because it was easier than admitting I might have failed as a father. But standing here now, I see it. You didn't fail. You thrived in spite of me. The anger in me softened, but only slightly. You don't get to erase the years of hurt with one conversation. If you want to fix this, it's not about me forgiving you. It's about showing up for your grandchildren. Prove to them that you can be the man they deserve. He nodded, silent, as though the weight of his mistakes had finally crushed through the armor of pride he'd carried his whole life. That day didn't heal everything. The scars ran too deep. But for the first time, the power wasn't in his hands. It was in mine. And I decided to use it not for revenge, but for change. My children deserved a family that lifted them up, not one that repeated the cycle of pain I had endured. And so, the story that began with humiliation was slowly rewriting itself into something else. Redemption. Not just for me, but maybe even for him, if he chose to take it. The final blow came at a family gathering no one expected me to attend. My sister had planned a lavish dinner to celebrate her husband's promotion, and of course the guest list was filled with people who once whispered about me being a failure. I walked in quietly, not with the intent to outshine, but with the calm power of someone who no longer needed their approval. When the food was served, I noticed something. My kids were seated at the far end of the table, plates delayed, just like before. My sister's children had their servings first, while mine were once again left waiting. The sight lit a fire in me. I stood up slowly, and the entire room froze. "Not again," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Years ago, you all thought my children could sit hungry while yours ate first. That moment pushed me to build a life where no one could ever make them feel small again. Tonight, I want you all to see who really came last, and who now stands first." Gasps rippled through the room as staff I had stepped forward with trays of food from my own 5-star restaurant chain, the one none of them even knew I owned. The logo gleamed in gold on the silver covers, and the shock on their faces was priceless. My sister's smirk collapsed into disbelief, her fork slipping from her hand. I turned to my children, who were watching me with wide, proud eyes. "Eat first," I told them, and they did, served before anyone else in that room. For the first time, my kids weren't forgotten. They were honored. Silence filled the hall until my father slowly raised his glass. "To Lauren," he said, his voice thick. "The one we underestimated, the one who proved us all wrong." Everyone followed, but their faces showed more shame than celebration. My sister's eyes burned with envy, but I didn't care anymore. This wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting the legacy my children would inherit. That night, I walked out with my kids' hands in mine, their laughter echoing behind me. The family that once mocked me had no choice but to watch me leave as the strongest person in the room. The story ended not with their approval, but with my own peace. And that, more than anything, was the victory.